Hello? It's time to go night-night. You ready to go night-night? Huh?
We'll see, bitch. We'll just see.
Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, tells the story of Lisa, the heroine from the last chapter of The Dream Master, has become pregnant and Freddy is haunting the dreams of her unborn child. Well, we're here, people, quickly approaching the bottom of the barrel of this franchise. Not quite the bottom of the barrel yet, that comes next. So after the wild financial success of A Nightmare on Elm Street for The Dream Master, New Line once again showed that they were putting absolutely zero effort into maintaining the quality of this franchise. They jump-started the 5th installment of this franchise immediately into production, slapped the director on, got the cast back, threw everybody in front of the camera with no script, no art direction, and no ending in mind whatsoever. They just did this movie completely on the fly. Now, while they took a very similar approach to The Dream Master, they didn't have nearly as talented of a director in this one like they did in 4 with Rennie Harlan, so the success of 4 didn't quite pan out into The Dream Child. But let's start off with the things that I did like about The Dream Child. First off, Lisa Wilcox is back. This is a direct continuation from A Dream Master, and she's pretty much just as good as she was in the 4th one as she is in this one. She doesn't have nearly as much interesting things to do as far as gaining all of her friends' powers whenever they die, which I was always kind of confused why they didn't continue that trend in this movie, because that was really an interesting element of The Dream Master. But nonetheless, Lisa Wilcox does do really well. Her boyfriend Dan is back in this one. He becomes a little bit more of an interesting character in this one than he was in the last one. The last one, he was just kind of the good-looking jock that everybody kind of marveled over, and he really didn't start entering the story until the final act, where in the first act of this movie, you really start to feel more of a connection between him and Lisa Wilcox's character. You understand why they're a couple.
It's gonna be a great summer.
Yeah, I know.
Hey, what's the matter?
Nothing. It's just, I didn't see my dad at the ceremony.
Well, he'll show up.
They kind of have this bond where they band together as survivors of the tragedy of the last movie, and you really buy into their relationship. Now, as far as our new side characters, the new victims, the new Elm Street children of Dream Child, the only character I'm going to talk about in the positives is Yvonne. She's the best friend of Alice, Lisa Wilcox's character. She's a pretty strong character. She's got some good back and forth and some good chemistry with Lisa Wilcox, which is important since they're best friends. She seems like if they had gone the direction of killing off Lisa Wilcox in this one, then she would have carried on to the next movie. She seems like she would have been that character. She didn't get nearly that much to do, but she does do well with what she's given. I like the fact that they kind of bring back Amanda Krueger. They expand on her mythology a little bit more. She's much more of an integral part of the story in this one. That's always a piece of the Freddy storyline that I've always been interested in, that I feel like they haven't quite dove enough into yet. So I like seeing that a part of the story back. And the whole concept of Freddy haunting the dreams of an unborn child is pretty creative. It sounds good when you write it out on paper. It sounds like you could have had a really cool movie with that. I mean, babies are asleep pretty much the entire time that they are in term, so that really takes away the safety blanket of being able to keep yourself awake to stay away from Freddy. He's haunting the dreams of somebody who is pretty much always asleep, so your ass is always going to be fighting Freddy Krueger. And now on to the negatives. Holy shit, this movie sucks. Now, while when they were making The Dream Master, they didn't really have too much of a script, they didn't have too much of a direction or an idea where the story was going, and Rennie Harlan was able to come up with all these elaborate death scenes, that didn't quite work out for him in this one because the MPAA totally butchered this movie down. Now, that's not necessarily the fault of this movie. They didn't really go into it with the best intentions in the first place, but there are some cool elements that could have been in these death scenes. Every single death scene in this movie got cut back to almost nothing. Now, with the exception of one death, which I'm going to talk about in a little while, that I actually really like, all the death scenes in this movie are terrible. I cannot stand the one whenever he just feeds the chick to death. That goes back to that really gross, weird tone of the Dream Master that I didn't care for, only ramped up to 11. I'm not a fan of the comic book death. I know that's the one that everybody loves from this movie, that they just enjoy the campiness of it.
Scarface lint dick.
I'm not one of them, and just beyond that, there's just nothing really all that exciting or creative with what they decided to do with the horror aspects of this. The Dream Child really started this slope of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies just starting to slide into this comical parody of itself, and I hate it. Now, I praised Yvonne as far as the side characters, but all the other side characters in this movie suck, especially the comic book guy. He is one of the worst characters in this entire franchise, and the actress who plays Greta doesn't do very good either. She's a really annoying character, doesn't do anything really all that memorable. She's the one who's like the model, the one with that really overbearing mother.
Greta, that's not what a cover girl puts in her body. Shit.
Didn't like that character at all, especially her death scene. Now, speaking about that overbearing mother, am I the only one who looked at her overacting, her campiness, and all I could think of was that whacked out aunt from Sleepaway Camp? Angela!
Well, I'm almost sure of it.
And another element of this cast of characters that really annoyed me, this group of friends, I know they were trying to go for diversity, they were trying to have everybody have their own personality and their own little quirks about them, much like they nailed in the Dream Warriors, but unlike the Dream Warriors where those kids were kept in a confined space and had to interact with each other, these kids are just free to do whatever they want in high school, and this cast of characters would never be best friends in a million years. None of these people would be hanging out with each other. And of course, while we're talking about characters, we gotta talk about Freddy Krueger. Robert Englund, of course, back again. And I don't blame Robert Englund for this because he's just doing what the script told him to do, but Freddy is terrible in this movie. This is where the one-liners absolutely are horrible. He's not scary, he's not menacing. He's starting to devolve into this annoying, like, weird boogeyman that you just kind of want off the screen altogether. Nothing about Freddy Krueger in this movie appeals to me at all. And his makeup is garbage. This is one of the worst Freddy Krueger makeups in the entire franchise. One element of the story that really bothers me in this, that they really do heavy-handed, especially in one scene whenever Alice and her father are talking to Dan's parents after Dan's funeral, they really go heavy-handed with talking about abortion and child custody and rights to kids. And that's just something that's so touchy and so kind of dark that you really don't want to explore that because it's not enjoyable to start talking about those things at all. And ultimately, all of these characters, all the story elements, all of these things add up to a really strange and very unsatisfying third act. Freddy Krueger gets killed by baby vomit. Just let that sit in for a second. Baby vomit.
School's out, Krueger.
They have this thing where Lisa Wilcox, Alice, kind of gets turned into Freddy for a minute, but then she splits back out of it. It doesn't really make any sense. Amanda Krueger gets brought in for a second. It's just such a weird, strange third act that you really don't understand what the hell's going on. None of it's fun to watch. None of it's cool. None of it's scary. It's just stuff. And all of those things added up together, the poor planning by New Line Cinemas and just shoving this thing into production, the bad acting, no story, really weak kills, a weak Freddy, an unsatisfying third act, all of those things led this to be the lowest grossing of the entire franchise. Now, before I get into my rating, I always choose my favorite or my scariest scene in all of these movies, and my favorite scene in A Dream Child is actually Dan's death. It's the first death of the movie, and it's by far the best death of this movie. It's actually one of the best ones of the franchise, believe it or not. And basically, he gets morphed and turned into this motorcycle biker demon guy. I know it sounds strange, but if you watch it, it's pretty cool. He's riding this motorcycle, these tubes, these wires and everything start going into his skin. The practical effects in that scene are awesome. They would have been even more bloodier if the MPAA didn't hack it down, but it still ends up being pretty cool. His skin gets blown apart and ripped apart, and he has this really crazy endoskeleton that kind of makes him look like this skull monster. And I love that entire sequence. Even though it kind of takes away one of the characters that I started to enjoy the most in this movie, that's a badass death. So to wrap all this up, guys, this is one of my least favorite Nightmare on Elm Street movies in the entire franchise. Aside from doing this review, I never have the interest in rewatching this movie. I probably never will rewatch it unless I'm in a serious Nightmare on Elm Street binge mood. Not likely. Like I've already said, the characters are weak, the acting is weak, the deaths are weak with the exception of one. Freddy is really watered down and terrible in this movie, and this movie just has nothing to give you except for that one scene, which you can honestly go on YouTube, watch Dan's death, and that's all you need to experience about the Dream Child, I promise you. So even if you're a horror fanatic, even if you're a fan of this franchise, and even if you're in a Nightmare on Elm Street binge mood, I still don't see a whole lot of reason to go back and watch this movie, so I'm going to have to recommend that you skip it. So what do you guys think about Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child? Do you actually like this movie? I know some people that actually prefer it to 4. I don't understand it, but are you part of that group? Explain why down in the comment section below. Or do you hate this movie as much as I do? Do you think this is a gigantic misstep and just a trash movie altogether that has no reason for you to go out and watch it? Put all your thoughts on The Dream Child and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise in the comment section below and we'll talk about it. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button. And you can also check down below if you want to follow me on all my social media links like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and my new Patreon page where I'm going to be having a lot of exclusive reviews, exclusive content. You can choose your own movie for me to review if you're a patron, and I'm going to be having commentaries, all that kind of cool stuff coming to Patreon, so check that out. And if you guys like this video, you can click over here and check out the rest of this Nightmare on Elm Street review series.